All right. Well, that's a natural pause. Do you want to go get a fan?
Yes.
Yeah. Go on.
I'll give 2 seconds.
Yeah. I'll just cut this bit.
Yeah. I have a fan.
Hell yeah! I've just realised I might just do what I did to Richie, where he had to let his dog out.
And you just
And
didn't
just
cut it out.
put this as the intro. I'm joined today by Scott McHugh, previously of Triple Crown Wargaming. You might know him as the Duke, and we're here to talk some Bretonnians. How are you doing today, Scott?
I'm very good, Ed. How are you?
I am doing well. It is currently pretty warm in the UK.
It is very
You
warm.
might be able to see from the hair. I've got a fan just off camera. I'm wearing as few clothes as possible. Very much 2021 Zoom, clothes from the waist up. Gotta be.
I didn't think far enough ahead to put a fan in the room. So
Oh, no.
I'm just boiling right here. But it'll be fun.
So we're going to start off by talking about the 3 different ways you can play Bretonnians. We thought it made the most sense to start off with what the way that you build the armies. So let's start off with the Grand Army. This is the one where you can take a little bit of everything. You can take all of the characters. You know, you're limited by 0 to 1 per 1,000 points in a couple of places, but it's fairly free and open. So do you want to give us a quick overview of sort of what you think the Grand Army is best for in terms of like, what's your approach? Is it sort of like a balanced, or do you want to use this to skew into a different angle?
Yeah, so my sort of first thoughts on seeing this were I was very happy that the Duke wasn't sort of limited with the Prophetess, and that's like a completely separate limit, because there's only a couple of armies that actually have their sort of top level combat character not linked to their level 4, and I think that really helps them. So I was a big fan of that. I also thought we'd actually see a lot more compulsory core choices in the other armies. Bretonnia seemed to have got a bit sort of hit with the double bat on that one, but it's not the end of the world, because your peasants can be really cheap, which is generally how I like to run them. I go almost bare minimum peasants, sort of 10 or 12 bowmen, or maybe like 15 men at arms, and then I go heavy into the cavalry. Try to avoid the knights errant. I did run them for quite a while, but they're just not very good. They're very expensive. They don't hit anything. They don't have enough attacks. Yeah, it's just, not my bag. But yeah, very much heavy on the cavalry. And I'm actually going back to field trebuchets, which I went away from, but I'm sort of heading back there as well.
Strength 10 on a trebuchet, isn't it?
Yeah. So if they hit, they hurt.
Yeah.
But obviously no access to rerolls or anything like that, which you get in a lot of other armies, which bit of a shame. But but generally you aren't too restricted. Really, the only one I think you're hit for is the peasant tax, because chances are you're going to take some knights of the realm either on foot or on horse anyway. So that isn't really a restriction. And the fact that none of your knight units have like an upper cap per 1,000 points, or just a flat upper cap by your sort of errants, which are linked to your knights of the realm, I think that's really good. The fact Pegasus knights aren't capped is
they should be.
They really should be. Like 0 to 1 per 1,000 points. They are begging for that sort of cap, I think.
Yeah, but the funny thing is, and we'll talk more about Pegasus knights. We'll talk a lot more about Pegasus knights down the line. But I think a 0 to 1 per 1,000 points wouldn't even hurt them. Like when have you ever taken more than 2 units?
Yeah.
Take one big, one small.
Fair.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do think they should have some sort of cap, because being able to spend like 1,000 points on Pegasus knights is crazy.
No, I absolutely agree. I have played against that. It's I will say there is a slight nerf to that now with the way the skirmisher getting into combat rule. So if you string your Pegasus knights out, so you get that massive charge bubble. Now, if the back models can't get into unit coherency, you start to lose them, which is a pretty expensive thing to lose.
Yeah, which hurts when they're like 50 odd points a model. It really hurts. But to be honest, I normally only run them in units of 3, maybe 4. So, and I don't go with the line. It's more of a sort of blob. So it doesn't. I don't think it will affect them too much. But yeah, if you are making long charges, or you get charged, and you're in a long line of 5 or 6 Pegasus knights, then I think you're right. It could really hurt to just lose a 50 odd point model straight away.
Yeah. but as downsides go, fairly minor.
Yeah.
But something that I find the couple of games that I've played with Bretonnians, I don't make use of this, a free BSB, because I find it really hard to fit a paladin into my list, which is interesting.
Yeah, I was taking it in basically every game, just because I was running like bare bones paladin. I think it's 83 points for a mounted paladin with lance and shield, literally nothing else, no upgraded vow, no virtue, and then just make him the BSB. But I just found because he died so easily, I'm then just giving up 100 points on top of his cost. And I was never really gaining the benefit, other than maybe the odd bit of +1 combat res that I needed to, break a unit. So actually now, I think, unless you're tooling your paladin up, probably to be survivable, your BSB, I don't think it's worth taking, even if it's free. Because I think you fall into that trap of just giving up the points when he inevitably dies.
Yeah, and I mean, so we'll get into characters more, but when I've written lists for Bretonnian Grand Army, I like trying to go for 2 combat characters and a level 4 caster, and then you go, well, that is all of my points.
That's all the points.
There's really nothing else to fit in there.
Yeah.
All right, so that's the Grand Army composition. Let's move on to one of the more interesting ones. I actually think both of the armies of infamy or armies of renown are really interesting. So we've got Bretonnian exiles.
Yeah, so this is one I haven't run personally. I have run the other one, but obviously this seems to be the more popular one at the moment.
Yes.
And I think looking at armies that I've seen of it, seems to lean more heavily into a core of foot troops. The Yeoman Guard are significantly better than men at arms. Just that extra pip of weapon skill makes a huge difference, let alone anything else. Again, you have to take a unit of them, so you're not sort of, really losing out on anything there. You do have to still take the units of Knights of the Realm, but you could take them on foot if you really wanted to lean into that. I probably wouldn't.
Often I see people running just 5 Knights of the Realm on foot, sort of in the same way as if you want to take a Black Orc Warboss and Wyvern. Like, I'll just take 5 Black Orcs and be happy about it.
Yeah, I mean, you could even run them in like a little dart, which I've seen people do, not with Knights of the Realm, but with other armies, in little marching column darts, just to, redirectors get in the way, that sort of thing. You've got to take them, so why not?
If you're taking potentially 4 bits of artillery, 5 Knights of the Realm on foot, not a bad little protection piece as well.
Yeah, not bad at all. Though you do lose out on the Duke, which is the big, well, that and not having level 4 wizards is the sort of big negative of this list, I think.
I assume that's why you haven't played this faction.
Yeah.
The personal insult alone is too much.
I can't be in the list. Why would I want to play this?
So let's quickly talk about what you get here. So you're capped to one Baron per 1,000 points. So you can take 2. You can take 0 to 1 Damsel. That's the level 2 caster. You can't take the Prophetess, the level 4 caster, but you can take Outcast Wizards, which are a weird little level 3 Empire Wizard, basically.
Yeah.
That is, and I got told off for this. I said, if they miscast, it's worse. If you miscast, you roll 2 sets of miscast and you take the lower roll, which I guess arguably could be better because it doesn't disrupt your casting phase. You are way more likely to kill yourself.
Yeah.
Just putting massive hide plates on top of your knights is not something you want to be doing.
Not great. There are definite downsides. I think that's a fair way to put it.
But they are cheap, and there are some very interesting magic items in this one. So other than that, core, again, very similar. Like you say, you've just changed the Yeoman Guard for men-at-arms, and special, you've still got your Peg Knights, you've got Squires, you can take Battle Pilgrims as well, which are quite interesting, although probably you just want to take big blocks of Yeoman Guard if you go in that direction. And then into rare, Questing Knights, Border Prince Brigands, Trebuchets, Bombards. Missing something.
Yes. Yeah, the big loss of the Grau Knights there. Do I think that's a bigger loss than the Duke? Probably not, but I think it's up there. I think it's almost as big a loss as the Duke. They're the sort of the one and only reliable horse-mounted knight unit that I have in my army. The Knights of the Realm are all right, but they're not going to win you games. Grau Knights can just go down a flank and win you that flank. And without them, the Questing Knights are okay, but they're not a Grau Knight.
Yeah.
There's nothing to really replace the Grau Knight in this list.
I think, unfortunately, Pegasus Knights, having that strength 4 breakpoint already, they're not super far off what you want a Grail Knight to do. Getting the second attack from Furious Charge. So they don't do quite the same role, but I think you can get away with not having the Grail Knights fairly handily. And I think as well...
You just can't have Pegasus Knights everywhere.
Well, say that. Turns out not that hard to avoid. Let's have a quick look at the special rules here. So just says you can't have the Grail Vow. However, you do get the Exile Vow. This is one of the big draws. The Exile Vow basically gives you Veteran, which is incredible if you have the Falcon Horn of Friedmund, which you will, because why wouldn't you take that and just make some armies unable to play? Does your dwarf opponent have loads of Gyrocopters? No.
Movement 2.
It's okay. They can still march and shoot, so they can go 4 inches.
Yeah.
That's like a normal infantry model. That's fast for a dwarf.
Yeah, it is.
You also don't get panic tests if levies or peasantries are destroyed within 6 inches of it, which I think might just be standard across all of the...
So all of the vows have that little caveat.
Perfect, It's literally just you get Veteran. Turns out that's really, really good.
Yeah, army-wide Veteran, not something to sniffer.
Especially when you're really struggling to fit in the paladin, as we discussed. Yes. So that's quite nice to have. Yeah. And then Reclaimed Glory. You don't start with the ward save that Bretonnians are famous for.
No, which feels harsh because you are, I think, quite clearly paying the points for it.
Sure.
Like, because, every Bretonnian army has the option to not pray. In your Grand Army list, you don't necessarily always come with the blessing. You can choose to not pray. And roll for first turn like normal, but you're clearly paying the points to have that ward save. It's not like we've sort of given it to you a bit cheaper, because sometimes you might not have it. It's definitely, we're just assuming you've got a ward save. And I think not starting with it makes that, particularly if you do still go second, can make that first turn of shooting or magic from your opponent really hurt. Because you lose a lot of points worth of models potentially when you've not had a chance to get the blessing yet. There are quite a few ways to get it though with this Reclaimed Glory, so it's not too difficult, particularly if you go first with 5 Vanguard in Pegasus Knights, for instance,
with 3 attached characters.
Yeah, sure.
Which turns out that's over 1,000 points of your army. So not only will you be killing a lot of stuff, that is a lot of points denial there.
Yes.
I was going to say, so this is less of a downside in my eyes than it could be, as long as because you're either taking big bricks of infantry, which weren't getting the ward anyway, so who cares? Or you're taking lots of Pegasus Knights that are going to stand behind a building or a wood or a hill at turn 1, or they're going to vanguard into a position where you haven't put all your shooting, and then they're going to charge something turn 1 and then immediately kill it or break it, overrun, something along those lines, and you're going to get the ward save anyway. As long as you pick your fights fine, it's a pretty good one there.
The only thing you've got to be careful of is that you have to choose your first charges really well, I think, with this Reclaimed Glory, which then almost means you're losing the benefit of first charge most of the time.
That's true.
Because you don't want to go into a big block, because you don't want to risk them not breaking completely and just falling back in good order and then you not getting the blessing.
Yeah, you want to pick up a bit of chaff. 10 rats, 5 Empire Archers, something in that vein.
A war
just
machine,
that you'll 100%.
Something like that.
Yeah. Or if someone's given you a war machine to charge turn 1, you're very happy about that. It happens. My first event, I did it. The first 2 games in a row. I was learning. But so Exiles, I think, is really fun. I think it might be the strongest way to play Bretonnians. I haven't played enough to have a firm opinion on it, but it feels like the abuse of that Pegasus Knights brick is so hard to play around because they're so tanky for their points once you've got that ward save.
Yeah, I think it's weird. I think that build, that very 1,000-point denial star Pegasus Vanguard in block build, is, like you say, very possibly the best way to play Bretonnians right now. I think if you play the Exiles list in perhaps more fluffy ways, how it's meant to be played, and that's not to say to put anything against anyone who wants to use that Pegasus unit. I will inevitably use it at some point. There's nothing wrong with doing it like that. But, from a fluff perspective, how the Exiles list should be played, I think the Grand Army list is still better.
Oh yeah, I absolutely agree. I think you can do very interesting things with this list, but if you're playing sort of like a slow grow campaign league, if you've got a group of friends, because just to briefly touch on what you said, there's nothing wrong with playing very strong lists as long as both players have that same expectation going in. If you and your mates are playing some knockabout games, you might want to just stick with Grand Army for this one, or you might want to go for
the other one,
the fun one, Errantry Crusade. I find this a very fun army list here.
This is your foot is on the gas pedal.
Oh yes,
turn 1 until turn 6. There is no stopping this.
There really is not. Let's have a look. What's different? Oh yes, core 1+ units of knight errant per 1,000 points. Yes. I think I can see how this list is designed to play. What's really interesting about this one is you don't have to take any peasants. So if you're like,
you can go full mounted.
Foot infantry. Why would I want to do that? I'm playing Bretonnians for a reason. I stuck through with one army book for 2 editions in about 27 years. I didn't want to have to play Bretonnian infantry when it came around to it. But so character-wise, you can still take the Duke. You can still take 2 level 4 prophetesses if you wanted to, which is all great stuff. You still get the paladin. You do have to take a paladin in this list, which is interesting. So at this point, I guess I'm taking the BSB because it's free. Core... 33% is core, which is interesting. That's more than I would like to spend on core, I think, in this list.
Yeah. Was the Exiles list 33, or is that still 25?
I think that's still 25.
I know the Exiles list, it wasn't something I mentioned, but the special percentage on the Exiles list drops to 33% from 50%.
Yes, and the rare goes up to 33.
And the rare goes up to 33, but your core stays at 25. Okay, and then the Errantry Crusade, your core goes up to a minimum of 33.
And the rare goes up to 33 as well.
But you've got to take 2 units of Knights Errant, and that very quickly fills those points at 2,000 points.
Sure.
Unless you're taking, bare minimum units with no upgrades, which you could do. You're probably going to go, here's my 2 half-decent sized units of Knights Errant. I've got about 150 points of core I have to spend. That's just that's a unit of Knights of the Realm, and you're done. It does feel like it's more than you want to spend when you've got to spend so much of it on Knights Errant. Yeah.
Well, so what size units do you go for your Bretonnian cavalry? Because this isn't something that I've really thought about too heavily.
So Ground Knights, I haven't run more than 6. I also haven't run less than 6.
6. You heard it here first. Grail Knights run them only as a 6. If you're doing it differently, you're wrong.
Questing Knights I've run as a 6. But that's just because I've only got 6 Questing Knights. I don't think I'd want to run more, though, just because it becomes too much of a points investment for a very situational matchup. Knights of the Realm, I think between 8 and 10. I'd start with a 4 deep lance, preferably filled out. So if you're putting like a character or 2 in there, you can go 8, or fewer characters, up the Knights a bit. Knights Errant, I'd probably just want them as small as possible. I'd probably give them some command, give them a champion and a banner. Probably wouldn't bother with a musician if I'm really sort of looking for points. But, they're in core, they're points you have to spend anyway. I've got the model. I'll probably give them a musician. It's like 7 points. It's not going to break the bank. But I think small units because of the impetuous.
Yeah, so before we finish talking about Errantry Crusade, I do want to talk about the Knights Errant, and I think this is really relevant for. I actually quite like the Knights Errant, especially in this detachment where you're probably playing full go, because I don't think they're meaningfully worse than the Knights of the Realm, as long as you're going into things that are, if you go into anything with weapon skill 4, they're exactly the same. That's the secret, basically. Weapon skill 4, weapon skill 2, you're just hitting the same. And there's
5.
Weapon skill 5's the same. When you get up to, I guess, 7, the errants become worse, but that's a losing fight. You didn't want to be there anyway. Like, they're not going to kill a dragon.
You probably charge like a prince on a dragon at that point. So it's a
he's just going, why have I done this? But I think for the points you save, a lot of the stuff you either... and this requires investment into them, so you're taking the bigger units, so you get the rank bonus and everything else. But I think the things that the weapon skill 3 stuff that you're hitting, you were going to win that combat anyway.
Mhm.
The weapon skill 4 and above stuff, you're typically going to struggle a little more. So having those extra points for more models, I quite like. I think
Yeah.
that's a...
Yeah, I mean, they're not. I think, off the top of my head, I think Errants are 19 and Realms are 24, 23 or
that
24.
sounds about right.
Something like that. So, I mean, you're looking at sort of, what, 4 Knights Errant for 3 Knights of the Realm,
Sure.
roughly. So you're not getting that many more Errants sort of for the points. But potentially, yeah, particularly in this list, I think, where everything, as we're going to get into, where everything's got Impetuous,
Yeah.
I don't
Well,
think that weapon skill is enough of an issue.
let's talk about it then. So,
Yeah.
these units get Crusaders of Zeal. It's a long list. As you can see here, all of the it's just all your knights. It's just all of the knights.
And your Battle Pilgrims.
And the Grail Pilgrims. I forgot.
Yeah.
They're very, very angry. So you get +1 to your charge range and +1 to your charge roll, but you also get Impetuosity.
Yeah.
So that +1 is pretty wild because you start off with a movement 8 horse. Is that correct?
Yes.
I believe it, yeah. And you reroll 1s on the charge and the swift stride, so you're already quite reliable. And you're getting that up to effectively a 9-inch move plus charge. That's faster than elves. When you're playing that game of footsie, and this is more something that comes in when you're playing better opponents and you're starting to jockey for positional play, that's quite big because you can stand at the end of your charge range and they are out. And that's hard to deal with.
Yeah. And then they've got the sort of question of, oh, well, do I push forwards and give him an easy charge, basically, or do I stay here knowing I'm out of charge range and hope he fails the Impetuous and then fails the charge, or just rolls a bit rubbish, fails the charge? So I do think the extra +1 to charge roll is very good. I think with Impetuous, though, the extra charge range, because it gives you a 18-inch maximum declarable charge, I think it is, on your knights.
9 + 9, 18. That's
9 from the swift stride. Yeah, so that's a big sort of distance where anything could force you to take an Impetuous test, which is the sort of downside of giving you that extra inch. But like you say, particularly if you're coming up against other cavalry and you've got, although no, Knights Errant don't have counter charge. I was going to say you've got counter charge anyway, but you don't. Which is actually something I only realised about 6 weeks ago, 2 months ago.
right.
Knights Errant don't have counter charge, which is, I think, another drawback for them. But
I'll be honest, I hadn't realised that. That does knock them pretty heavily in my estimation.
Also, questing knights don't have it. I sort of get them because they don't have lances. But
but also, I'll be honest, I don't see much reason to take questing knights. No.
They're lovely models. They really are probably the best Bretonnian knight models, in my opinion. But they're not great.
Lovely stuff. So what else do we get? We get the Crusader's Vow. You get Veteran. Again. This time you have to take the BSB, so I'm a lot less excited about this. Still great for the Falconhorn, but it's just both of them getting Veteran seems like an odd choice to go for in your rules writing.
It's I mean, like we said it before, it's a really massive army-wide buff to just get. You are hampered a bit by the Impetuous that you also get, so I think that's the sort of balance, at least with this list. And obviously the balance with the exiles is that you don't start with the blessing, but it is so easy to get that I don't really think that's a downside.
Yes. It's a little bit of a weird mixture that you're both impetuous and a veteran. It's an odd combination of rules to go for there.
Yeah, I do think, though, that's possibly because, unlike most armies whose elite units have an option to buy a veteran or just come with it anyway, no Bretonnian unit gets that. So, not even Ground Knights can just buy a veteran in the normal list. So I think that's possibly why both of their armies of infamy give them army-wide veteran, perhaps.
I think that's a fair point. And now, what I think actually might be the best rule here, earn your spurs. Enemy standards captured by Knights Errant is worth 100 points instead of 50. And within 6 inches of a Grail Vow or any Lord of Bretonnia, Knights Errant reroll hit rolls of 1. This is huge.
Yeah.
Not only are you more efficient at killing stuff, you get way more points as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that is huge because I think you just go with an 83-point paladin in probably all of your Knights Errant units, because you're probably only going to have 2.
Sure.
Even if you go minimum, you'll probably have 2 and then go Knights of the Realm, or at worst, you'll have 3. So you go, okay, here's 249 points of 3 paladins. One's the BSB because it's free.
Yeah.
Everyone rerolls once.
Does that do they get they don't get the Grail Vow natively? Do you have to spend points to
Paladins
get?
don't know. You can buy them the Gravel, but they are a Lord of Bretonnia, so you get it anyway.
Ah, yes, of course, it's the Grail Vow or
Yeah.
the Bretonnia. Okay.
So I mean, you could be more sort of efficient than that and go, well, I've got a unit of Ground Knights, I've got a Duke that I'm already taking, so they're going to sort of almost babysit 2 units of Errants. I'll trap a Paladin in the middle one. If I've got 3, everyone should have rerolls. Or you just spend 250 points and guarantee that all of your units have reroll ones.
Yeah, I like that approach. I also like just the thought of a defensively kitted out character on a Royal Pegasus, just flying around. That's probably good as well. Both seem fine. Oh, you could even make that your BSB, and then they're less likely to get run down. But I think I like your idea of having just a Paladin in a unit, because then they're adding to the combat res, they're killing more stuff, you're more likely to run the enemy models down, you get that banner. That's important. So really like that one there. All right, perfect. So that is what we've got for the army rules. Let's have a talk about the characters, and I do want to start off with the ones in the Arcane Journal, because there are 3 characters, and we said before this, 2 of the 3 are really, really good, and the third one, and then we started talking about it, like, actually,
I
don't hate this. So let's start off with the Green Knight. So the Green Knight is wild. The Green Knight has a large number of rules. First of all, ethereal.
Yeah, phenomenal.
This really ruins me, because a lot of the armies I play, like, for example, Orcs, you're like, oh, I don't want to take magic weapons. I just want to have an AP3 Great Axe, great weapon. That's way better. And then you come up against something like this, like, I didn't plan for this eventuality. So not only is it ethereal, it is T4 with 4 wounds, which is such a bizarre amount of wounds. And you've also got, is it a 3-up save? Am I right in thinking? And the armor shield barding, 3-up armor save, and I think as well 4-up ward.
5-up, always 5-up.
Only a 5-up. That's fine. So what does that mean? Ruby Ring of Ruin. That's going to take you a lot of time to chip through. On average,
you can't just hit this guy with 1 magic missile and expect to kill him. Because that's the sort of the offset with ethereal. Normally, stuff that's ethereal has basically no save. And is normally quite light on its toughness. It's normally toughness 3. But to have that extra pip of toughness, 4 wounds, wild, and have the armor and the ward save, crazy.
And they're normally really pricey as well. Whereas this chap's 275 points, which if you compare it to the Brett Lords, you're looking at maybe like 350 or pushing a little higher. This is, you could almost consider this a budget character. It's only horse mounted though, so it doesn't have the mobility. Only it does.
Kind of does.
Do you play on a terrain set that has woods on the board? If no, start putting woods on the board. Bretonnian players and wood elves are crying, having to play on pure asphalt. Don't do that to them.
This guy's my favourite to use against wood elves though, because you know there's going to be a wood.
Although because they skirmish, in theory, they can fill up the space. That doesn't happen on turn 3. No plan survives first contact in the enemy. People forget that you've got something that you're rolling to come in. In fact, let's talk about how that goes. So you awaken the Guardian of the Sacred Sites. Do you want to just summarize this instead of us reading an entire paragraph?
So you don't deploy him at the start of the game. From your start of turn subphase, from turn 1, crazily, you roll a dice. On a 1 to 2, he doesn't turn up. You roll again next turn. On a 3+, he arrives, and you select. You place him in a natural terrain piece, which they don't sort of go super into detail of what a natural terrain piece is. But it's basically any woods, any difficult or dangerous terrain that doesn't have like a built structure on it. So not hills, rules is written, because they're not difficult or dangerous terrain. But woods and rivers and marshland, that sort of thing. Maybe if you're sort of playing with a bit of your own terrain, like fields, stuff like that. basically.
If you put a cornfield down, you're like, okay,
Yeah.
so the entire board is where I can bring on the Green Knight.
Oh, we're playing on a grass field. It's all natural.
Absolutely. That's a great justification.
Yeah.
I don't want to hear any arguments for that one. But yeah, so you roll off and it's a 3-up, and you
Yeah.
can roll on turn 1 as well, can't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. And how do you come in on those natural bits of terrain?
You just get placed immediately at the start of turn subphase, at least an inch away. That's the only stipulation.
A whole inch away.
Oh yeah,
Man,
whole inch. Yeah.
That's going to be really hard to charge, but I'm sure you wouldn't be able to charge with a model that's just turned up from reserves.
You'd think.
Yeah.
You'd think. But no, you can charge. Yeah, and very often do.
Almost always.
Yeah. Because you're an inch away and you're a skirmisher because you're a lone character. You're not going to fade it. So.
Pretty incredible, but that's fine. So you've turned up, you've ruined my 2 Hellblaster volley guns, but I've managed to finish you off. I had 3 battle magic wizards, so I put everything into you. You're dead now. Then I get to roll to see if you come back.
Yeah. So basically, it works exactly the same as rolling to see if he turns up the first time. It's just a -1 to the roll for every time he's died, and he also loses a wound every time he comes back. So on the second time, he'll come back on a 4+ with 3 wounds, 5+ with 2 wounds, 6+ with 1 wound.
But to a minimum of 1. So
yeah.
So if you go second,
yep,
and your opponent's killed multiple times, you're down to your last wound, you can still roll, come back on your turn, like, I'm not going to charge, but you haven't got 275 points of victory points, which is...
Yeah, he has to be dead at the end of the game for you to get any points for him.
It's incredible.
And your opponent often spends quite a lot of like resources and time going after him.
Yeah.
And then just to go, oh, he's back on turn 6, you get nothing for that.
And I'm not seeing any rule here that says it can't be your general. Can it be your general?
I think he has the loner keyword.
That would do it. Keyword. Yes, he does. Okay. I was trying to protect even more victory points.
But yeah, he's very good. Really, his only downside is that he is at best AP 1 unless you roll a 6.
Sure.
But because you can choose his sort of combats really comfortably, that's not the end of the world. But I would recommend looking at his stats before you use him for the first time and charge him into, I don't know, Cold One Knights, for instance, with a 2-up save, and then just bounce off. Don't do that.
Yeah. So does he have... he doesn't have anything... Yeah, so he hasn't got any unstable rule or anything like that. So even if you do lose combat, if you lose it against...
Yeah, he is unstable.
Oh, he is unstable.
Yeah.
Yes, that last rule there.
Yeah.
So you do have to make sure you do a little bit of damage, otherwise you are going to be bouncing off. But yeah, so you have a weapon with 2 profiles, which is quite nice. So you either pick Strength, AP -1, and D6 additional attacks on top of your initial 4. Or you get Strength +2, AP 1, Armor Bane 1, and Multiple Wounds 2. Both of these are magical attacks as well. So that looks pretty good. That will kill war machines very comfortably.
Yeah.
That will deal with skirmishing units very comfortably.
Yeah.
That's enough to make most small to medium-sized units quite concerned, especially if they have no magical attacks.
Yeah, most ranged units he's really good for picking off. Like ranged infantry. Ranged cavalry, like skirmish cavalry, he's really good for as well, because they generally will have like a 5-up or a 4-up at best, really. And then a probably toughness 3 because they're probably an elf. Because they have the best skirmish cav.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's not one to go into like other Bretonnians. He doesn't like that very much because they've got the armor save to sort of survive his attacks.
Yeah, unless of course they're playing with a couple of trebuchets, at which point probably earns his points back and then just harasses the back lines. But yeah, no, that's a fair point. Doesn't enjoy the high saves.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess in a game where there's a lot of knights and maybe not a huge amount of static combat res, it's not the end of the world just to tie them up, take a wound or so from Unbreakable, and go from there. All right, so a great start. Let's skip this one for now, and we'll move on to Lady Elisse Duchaard. And I personally think that if you're writing a Bretonnian list that can take Elisse, and you haven't put her in, you should reassess what you're doing, because she is so good. And just to very quickly see if we're on the same page, I think the biggest problem for Bretonnians is magic that shuts down your army. For example, Miasmic Mirage, Column of Crystal, all of these things that are so difficult to deal with.
Mm.
What if you had a character that was not as good at casting, but unbelievably good at shutting down enemy magic? That's what you've got with Lady Elisse Duchaard.
Yes.
So, first of all, 225 points. So cheap.
Yeah, really cheap. Really cheap.
T4, 5 wounds, which is, again, quite heavy for a caster. You're looking at, I believe you do have Armoured Hide 1. Yeah, so you even get a 6-up save, but that's not going to make much difference. Maybe against some Small Arms Fire. And I believe there's a ward save in there.
Yeah, she's got the blessing.
Just the standard blessing,
Standard blessing, yeah.
Yeah. So a level 3 caster with elementalism, and then the most important thing, +1 to dispel. So your dispelling is a level 4. But if you roll any natural double other than a natural double 1, the spell is unbound, and the wizard casting it takes a single wound.
I mean, it's phenomenal. Like, forgetting the fact that she can dispel in the normal way by beating the casting roll, that's just 1/6 of the time she dispels the spell.
Yeah, well, I guess slightly less because the double ones. Yeah.
But it just adds. You're probably adding, top of my head, probably like 4 or 5, 3 or 4 chances, like rolls of the dice, results on the dice to dispelling a spell over what you'd normally have. And if it's for those, I think, when your opponent goes, I've rolled like a 6 and a 5. And you need to double 6 it, and I've rolled like a double 2. Yeah, wow, it stopped. I'm never going to dispel a normal wizard. A normal level 4 is never going to dispel it, but she's always got that almost 1/6 chance of just dispelling it.
And she's also lethal to have in the middle of especially multiple wizards, because if you're playing a caster-heavy army, it's not uncommon that you'll end up with, a couple of wounds scattered between your casters. You're going to miscast at some point. You're probably going to take a wound at some point. If you're down to 2 wounds, or if you're playing Skaven and you're using the Warp Biscuits, you're throwing wounds on yourself with reckless abandon, and then Elisse rolls a double 2. Too bad, so sad, no spell, also you're dead. Thank you for playing. It's brutal. I really like it.
Yeah, I've only seen her be used in one game. I've not used her myself. She's in the box, still unbuilt. But I've seen her used in one game, and she killed a Chaos Sorcerer Lord in 2 magic phases. Which is well above the odds. But very funny.
Yeah. Let's be clear. You're not taking her to kill enemy wizards.
Do that, no.
But you might kill enemy wizards. It's just a freebie. You're going, this is the best way I can protect my army. Also, it's a level 3 caster you can sub for the elementalism or 2 of the Law of the Lady signature spells, and there are, I believe, 2 good ones in Law of the Lady that you might want to go for. The regen.
I think all of them have a place.
Sure.
Of those 3. But I think you never see, what is it, Lady's Wrath, the one that gives you +1 strength, -1 AP for your unit. You never see that one because your wizards are never in units. But the other 2 I think are very good.
Yeah. I could see her being put in a fairly beaty unit. It would feel a little bad to go in Pegasus Knights, but you could put her in Pegasus Knights. Say, I'm losing the fly, I keep the movement, and this unit's going to crush whatever it hits, so she's going to be out of the unit, so she still gets to dispel. I think that's an option you could go for. It'd be very army dependent, but she's so flexible. Look at how many special rules she has. Any model with this many special rules is good, as I've learned from looking at Doomseekers. Fantastic. Yeah. Any last thoughts on the lady before we move on?
So her Chalice of Bretonnia, if you just scroll down, I looked at this first and I was like, that's, it's not very good. Actually, that's not bad. I think it will come up a lot more than you think it will come up. So, like other Bretonnians, the Falconhorn, suddenly that's significantly harder for them to stop your Pegasus Knights flying. Rallying Cry, the example they used there, is a really good one to just, hopefully make those units run off the board if you finally got a break. I think that's something that feels like one of those rules that would get forgotten by a lot of people that use it because it won't come up all the time. But I think when it does, it could well be crucial and, end up with you winning the game because of it, or drawing a game you might have lost, something like that. I think that's a really big thing, to have that bubble of actually all these command abilities that you might be able to do that use a leadership test. Yeah, they're now significantly harder for you to do.
Yeah, that's fair. I guess my only concern with it is the leadership 8 command range, unless you make her your general.
Yeah.
Which means you're not taking a baron. But yeah, it will come up sometimes, and I think when it will come up is when your opponent has forgotten about the rule, and you've also forgotten about it. It's not like a gotcha thing, I think, but you'll just go, oh, hold on.
Oh, she's within 8 over here, yeah.
I've moved really close to you. And I guess because a lot of the stuff's in the command phase, you have the agency if you move in range of your opponent to shut it down. So, yeah, I had kind of written that one off, but that's a fair point. It's, again, you're not paying for this, but it's just a freebie on top. Yeah, 225 points. That's a fantastic package. Yeah. Just really good. While we're here, let's just talk about the third one, because I think we're both not necessarily huge converts on it, but...
No. But it was surprising. I think it surprised both of us, actually.
Yeah.
That he's, potentially got some use, which we didn't think he had.
we definitely didn't. So the first thing I want to highlight, Sir Cecil, I butcher that, Sir Cecil is a baron, not a duke. So you can take it in exiles, which is probably where I would think you would want to, where you want strong foot characters.
Yeah.
So you're looking at a fairly, reasonably beefy character, T4, 3 wounds, 4 attacks, all of the good stuff there. Starting off with heavy armor shield, Sorrow's End, which is a strength +1, AP -1, magical attack, monster slayer, multiple wounds, 2 sword. The fact that it has multiple wounds 2, I think, saves it for me. Because if your movement 4 character is slaying dragons, your opponent has really messed up. We'll just put it in those unbiased, unjudging terms. But if you're allowed to hit a dragon with this chap, maybe you shouldn't be allowed to. But he has got some interesting rules. You get, so the Wormslayer, if you slay monstrous infantry, cavalry, creatures, or behemoth in the combat phase, you get terror for the rest of the game. That's funny. It immediately has no effect on any of the things he actually wants to be killing, which are terror-causing dragons. But it's still, it's just a rule that, again, you're not paying for, but you do it and you're like, oh, hold on, I have terror. And that means, that means in Old World pretty much nothing. -1 leadership if I beat you. But, it's there.
It means you don't have to take a terror test if you're charged by that dragon.
Sure. That's actually not awful. Has Rallying Cry, just a rule that's, you don't think about, but then it comes up, you're like, oh, God, I'm so glad I had Rallying Cry. And
he also, just interestingly, comes with the Exiles Vow. So he could, is a way to get, the Exiles Vow is just Veteran, isn't it? There's nothing else that does it. Oh, Veteran and Stubborn, I think, isn't it, the Exiles one?
That would be really good if you could put the Falcon Horn on him. Unfortunately, he's a named character.
But it could be a way of getting, if you want Exiles Vow into your, Grand Army list for some reason. If you want that Stubborn on a character.
On a foot model. I think for me, this is still a fluffy narrative character that doesn't hit a competitive table. But you're not feeling bad about taking him in a fluffy narrative game. I think that's where I come down there.
That's true.
What we do have, though, is the Dragonhide Cloak, and that's what made you, I think, point out that maybe he's not as terrible. So he reduces AP of non-magical weapons by 2, immune to killing blow, immune to multiple wounds, and if he suffers any unsaved wounds from either of those, you only suffer a single wound, and you get a 3-up ward against flaming attacks. That's a lot of rules, a lot of defensive rules.
For one cloak.
Yeah.
That's all on one cloak.
This is the first movement for dwarf in existence. That's... I think that's what we're looking at. But I don't know that we necessarily need to look too closely at that, other than... so let's quickly move on, and we will look at the Lords of Bretonnia. So there are 3 different tiers of character. Do you want to walk us through how that works in terms of, obviously there's no Lord Hero distinction, but there are some interesting points.
So your Paladin, your lowest level, he's obviously your BSB, as we've spoken about. He's reasonable stat line. Nothing, really to write home about. Weapon skill 6, pretty solid. Strength toughness 4, a couple of wounds. 3 attacks, which is quite nice for that level character. And leadership 8, 60 points. He's very cheap. And he's definitely got that going for him. Now, you do obviously need to buy the horse if you want him on a horse, which is, I think, 16 points, something like
Sounds
that.
about right.
It's not expensive. And the Baron is your sort of mid-tier. This is what, if you played, 6th, 7th, or 8th edition, this is what your old Bretonnian Lord stat line was, basically, with very slight differences. So he does stay at weapon skill 6, the Baron, but he's got an extra wound, initiative, and attack, and leadership for 40 points. That, again, doesn't seem bad, but he does come out of your sort of prophetess slot, as it were, in your Grand Army. Now, both of those, Baron and Paladin, come with a Knight's Vow, which is your standard vow. Basically means peasants don't cause you to panic. You can upgrade both of them to have either questing or growl. The Duke, top tier one, he comes with a growl vow, which saves you 20 points straight away. He's also got an extra weapon skill, extra strength, extra wound, extra initiative, extra attack, stage initiative 5, and stays the same leadership. And he's 75 points more than the Baron, which feels quite chunky at first sort of glance. But I think when you consider you're saving 20 points on the growl vow, so suddenly he's 55 points for a weapon skill, a wound, and a strength, and an attack. I still think that's well worth it. And then has the added benefits of more magic item allowance.
I was going to say the hidden bonus of being able to spend more of your pay points to spend more points.
Yeah.
But that does unlock some interesting item combinations, which we'll get to down the line. I think so. For me, my favorite thing about the Baron is that it's leadership 9. And that means that if you want to really tool up a Duke, you can do that and not worry about losing them as your general. You can take the Baron as the general, and you can, potentially put the Falcon Horn on the Baron, benefit from that leadership 9 when you're using the rolls. I think that's a really strong role. The weapon skill 7 sucks a little bit, but these are humans.
Yeah.
These stat lines for humans are unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's
I think a
almost
lot of
Chaos
people
Lord level.
Sort of felt that, particularly for the Duke stat line in the almanacs before Old World was released, when GW gave us those weekly articles.
Sure.
A lot of people were looking at that and going, strength 5 human, that shouldn't be the case. I'm like, well, he comes with a growl vow, so he's, drunk from the growl in the fluff. He's basically a demigod.
Yeah.
I'm more than he's the sort of good guy equivalent of a Chaos Lord, which you can see from the stat line. It's basically the same stat line. So I'm more than happy for him to be strength 5 and weapon skill 7. And I mean, maybe he could be strength 6 or 7 or 8, but that's just me. Maybe I'm saying that because I use Bretonnians a lot.
That might be, yeah. I was with you up until you pushed the boat a little bit too far there. But interestingly, this is one of the few characters in the game that you can tool up that might actually scare a Chaos Lord and Dragon.
Yes,
which is quite nice. So obviously, got some options down here. As you say, you start off with the Grail Vow. The other two, the Baron and Paladin, can upgrade to the Grail Vow or take the Questing Vow, which we haven't touched on. The Questing Vow. Do you want to? Do you know what that does? Is there ever any reason to take it? I think off
the top of my head, they can reroll Fear and Terror tests, I think, and they are stubborn.
Excellent. Pay 5 more points
and then stubborn.
Pay 5 more points and get the Grail Vow. That seems just to be the better choice there. So great stuff. You can take a lance, and there's 2 other options there that you won't take, but they look pretty on the page. Which is actually, I do like the models with the the Morning Stars, but
they have done some nice models. To be fair, I think the Morning Star. I think if you're going for an on foot build, obviously you can't take a lance. The Morning Star isn't bad for 3 points. Cheeky +1 strength.
Make the most of that initiative 5.
It's not bad, but I think the issue with that is you're almost certainly not taking these guys on foot.
And if you were, you'd probably want a magic weapon. So
yeah.
But in that world, in that very specific set of circumstances, you might not feel bad about the Morning Star. So Handmaidens of the Lady, we have kind of touched on these a little bit, so I don't think there's too much to go into here. But this is your classic level 2, level 4 caster. You're looking at 165 points for a level 4. That's really cheap. Obviously, you're going to pay for a mount as well, but still incredible value. Or there's a damsel, which I don't see why you'd ever take.
No,
to be fair, they give magical attacks.
They do, which is really nice. They're Aura of the Lady lets you give out magical attacks to your unit, which is really nice. Come with magic res 2 as well on both of them, which is very nice. I have sort of tried to play around with maybe having like a super cheap level 1 damsel on a horse in most, if not all, of my units, and just taking that Wrath of the Lady or Lady's Wrath signature spell and just hoping I get it turn 1 and people forget it's there, and forget to dispel it, so I get +1 strength and -1 AB on my knights.
Yeah.
But that adds up very quickly. If you're having like a damsel in every unit, suddenly you've got 2 or 3 damsels, and that's, you know, a couple of 100 points coming out of your character slot, which is a very competitive slot for Bretonnia.
Yeah, because I do like trying to fit in 2 BT characters and a support character, so that just spends all of the points immediately.
Yeah.
I feel like this is the point where we should probably talk about the fact that all of your characters will be mounted, because of course they will, the Bretonnians.
Yeah.
Character mounts. So, as you can see, we've got an option that only the Duke and Baron can take, the Hippogriff. And then we have the options that you will take. There's the Bretonnian Warhorse at 16 points a model. For those of you keeping track at home, extra points there for Scott. He did get that right off the top of his head.
Hey.
Gold star.
I've added it on my army list so many times.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. God, do you remember writing army lists down, pen and paper? Takes me back.
Those are the days.
Yeah, absolutely. Royal Pegasus as well, 60 points. This thing is cracked out of its mind, but we'll go down in a second. And then the Prophetess and Damsel, you're looking at the Warhorse, the Bretonnian Warhorse, Royal Pegasus for the Prophetess only, and a unicorn as well. And I think both of those monstrous cavalry options are actually quite nice.
Yeah.
I think unless you're going Lady Elisse, who comes with the Pegasus built in, I'm not sure I'd want to go... Sorry, the unicorn built in. Yeah. I'm not sure I'd want to go for a unicorn when you could pay 25 points more for a Pegasus.
Yeah.
But they're not an awful option.
No.
So, Bretonnian Warhorse, I was going to say fairly standard. Unbelievably good as horses go. 8-inch move, so +1 inch over what you normally get. And then also finest Warhorses for reroll 1s on your charge and Swift Stride rolls.
Yep.
First charge, Swift Stride, counter charge. That's all of the rules that you want to have.
Yeah.
And then there's also Warhorses in case you want to join, I guess.
Mounted Yeoman?
Yeah. Yeah, they are light cavalry, yes. So, a mounted yeoman skirmish. Do they have skirmish in open order?
Skirmish open order.
Okay, so that lets you put a character in a skirmish brick of mounted yeoman, which is honestly not an awful choice. Having ablative wounds and keeping your 360 line of sight is pretty okay.
Yeah, and to be fair, if you're really tight on points and you want to shave some points, if you're not running your wizards in units, in like units of knights, there's not much reason, I don't think, of dropping them from a Bretonnian Warhorse to a regular Warhorse. You lose the 6-up armor save. Sure. You're a character, you shouldn't be getting shot anyway. You know, you should be hidden behind a unit or a hill or something.
Yeah.
You're a wizard, so you're not going to be charging anything. Really. If you are, you've probably lost. And you've still got Swift Stride. So,
sure.
I think if you're really super tight on points, there's no issue dropping a Bretonnian Warhorse down to a Warhorse for any of your wizards.
I know I personally wouldn't want to do it myself, because there would be that one game where I really want magical attacks because I've got to deal with the enemy Grey Nerf. And just that stops me from countercharging and everything else. But I think you're right. 99 times out of 100, you're like, I'm glad I saved that 4 points. It lets me put in something else.
Yeah.
So here's the good stuff. Barded Pegasus. This is a mount that you can take. But let's just move on to the Royal Pegasus, because this is the mount that you will take.
Yeah.
So first stat, movement 8. That's really nice, because if you can't fly, you're still really fast.
Yeah.
Just default, you're quick. Fly 10 as well, so you get that fly. Obviously, monstrous cavalry. This is a skirmisher. You're going to be joining Pegasus Knights or running free, so you're going to be getting that 360 line of sight there. Surprisingly good in combat for a 60-point model.
Yeah, not bad.
3 attacks at strength 5. There's no AP on it, but you do get armor bane 1, which is aggressively fine on your weapon skill 4 mount.
Yeah.
Then you've got all of the good stuff: counter charge, first charge, Swift Stride, 2 stomp attacks as well, which just a little bit of extra combat res into those Empire spearmen or something like that.
War Machine crew, that sort of thing.
Okay, yeah, that's actually a valid
Something
point,
you
I
might
suppose.
see.
Yeah, I was like, this rule's not going to matter much. Yes, no, actually it might. And then you do get the +1 toughness and +1 wound. So that takes you up to your T5 on your, I think all of your characters. Is it Prophetess T3 or is she T4?
The Prophetess is 3.
3, yeah. So it takes you
Yeah.
up to T4 on a caster, which is still fine.
Yeah.
But then your paladin upwards, you're looking at a T5 model with 4+ wounds, I believe it is. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
really, really solid. Do you want to have a talk about the Royal Pegasus? This is the key mount, I would say.
Yeah, this is certainly the most aggressive character mount for your combat characters. Like you say, it's skirmish. It's fly 10, so it's crazy quick. 19-inch max declarable charge with its swift stride and its fly with the 360. I am very glad that I got mine painted up. Is the best I can say about it, really, because he has been in every game since. I used to run the Duke on the Hippogriff, which is a bit tankier, but the Hippogriff is like more than double the points of the Pegasus, which is crazy to me when you look at the stat lines. This is really cheap for what it is. It's not a cheap mount when you compare it to other mounts, but it's cheap when you compare it to what it does.
I'd argue it's a cheap mount if you compare it to other mounts, because it's effectively your griffin analogy. Obviously, it's not a monstrous creature, which is an upside. It's still got stomp attacks. It's still getting you to that toughness 5. It's giving you a little bit more wounds, less than you get from a griffin, but you've got more base. In fact, let's compare it to the... it's down in the monster section, isn't it?
Yeah.
The Hippogriff. So, in comparison, twice the price. Gives you same toughness. It gives you 2 extra wounds. The attacks are a little bit better. There's 4 of them. 3 of them you make with the Wicked Claws, so strength 5, AP 2. One of them is strength 5 on the Bane 2, multiple wounds 2, which is fine. Extra pip of weapon skill, strength, same toughness. This is limited because it doesn't give you the 360-degree line of sight. I think that's the biggest downside to this model.
You also have to pay for the barding on it. So actually,
you do
75 points more expensive.
Yeah. I will say though, normally on this sort of character on mount, you don't get barding. However, you also can't get full plate in the Bretonnian army, so I guess that kind of evens out a little bit.
Yeah.
But that's very funny. It's actually 135 points. This is more than a Withen, and you can't put a Black Orc on top of it. So, although not even arguably, a Duke is better than a Black Orc. Unfortunately, they're pretty solid. But yeah, so this is the way to get terror if you want to do some terror bombing. There is maybe a build that you go along there. It's only the Duke that can take the Hippogriff, though, isn't it? So you can't even just go, I'm going to... Something I've been looking at with High Elves is putting cheap characters on Griffins. You can look at like 230 points with some defensive profile there. Yeah. And you could take 2 or 3 of them to do some terror bombing.
Yeah.
It's not good. You can't even do that here. Yeah.
No.
175 points plus 135.
Yeah, I think a Baron might be able to.
Yeah, let me just go back up then, because
But yeah, I mean, even on a Baron, you're then taking that out of your level 4 slot.
Oh, yes, no, you're right.
Yeah, Duke and Baron. But then you're sort of, at most, you're going to have 1 Baron and 1 Duke, because you're going to want that level 4. So, yeah, like you say, even then, I don't think it really works in that sort of build, unfortunately. It's a quite nice old model, could have probably done with a refresh, but it's not really got a sort of place, unfortunately.
If you've got that and you haven't got a Royal Pegasus, as long as you're playing casually or you check with your TO, just use it as a Royal Pegasus. I don't think anyone's going to mind.
Yeah,
it's a good excuse to use a really nice old model. Like I say, if you go into an event, check with your TO, but I think most people are going to be like, oh yes, this is obviously the mount that I'm expecting to play against.
It has wings, it has a Bretonnian on the back, it is clearly a Royal Pegasus.
Yes, or yeah, of course, it's painted white. Why wouldn't it be?
Yeah.
So just for completion's sake, we've got the Unicorn here as well, which is a 10-inch move. So like I say, can keep up with the Pegasus Knights if you want to give up your fly. Then it has some other rules. +1 wound, no toughness. So you're a T3 caster on the back of this, which is I'm not in love with.
No.
Gives you a 6-up save. Beguiling Aura is quite nice. Enemy models that make attacks against this model in combat have to take a leadership test. If they fail, only 6s to hit. Natural 6s hit. I'd rather just have a Pegasus and not get into combat, I think is my approach with that one.
I do think that Beguiling Aura will interact with Lady Elisse's Chalice. The leadership test you have to take in the command phase.
Yeah.
Oh no, it's not. It's combat phase. Ignore me. It's not.
Yeah.
That. But
Okay.
I was
Yes.
hoping there'd be some sort of internal synergy there for it, but there is.
If you take Cecil, if you're in combat, that causing terror, having killed something big, that -1.
Yeah.
if we really find a way to make it work, I'm not feeling it. Or you could just take the hippogriff and have terror there. That's a way to get a little bit of a debuff. Lovely stuff. And I think that is all for characters, isn't it? Oh no, that's not quite. There is the one that I always forget about. The Sergeant at Arms. Do you want to talk about this one?
Yeah, so he's sort of your peasant character, basically. He is okay stat-line-wise. Strength 4, which is actually quite nice. Weapon skill 4, which is very good for a peasant. Leadership 7, which isn't amazing at first glance, but he does have Warband, as do the men-at-arms. So you can... I think they've got Horde as well, so you can quite comfortably get that up to Leadership 10 for quite cheap. He's peasantry, which means he doesn't cause panic when him and his unit run through nights. And he's peasant's duty. So when they make a panic test, they don't have to make a panic test when like levies run through them or break within 6 of them, and then they can choose to give ground rather than fall back in good order from combat.
Which is very strong.
Solid.
That is really a very strong rule, and it's something to play around, especially when we talk about the Yeoman at Arms. If you go for those big combat bricks that don't want to run away, that's definitely something else.
Yeah.
All right, on to the last of the characters. We've got the Outcast Wizard, and these are a bit of a weird fish, but I think fairly pivotal. Something that you probably want to build around in the Exiles list specifically, because that's the place you can take them.
Yeah, that does help. I think, off the top of my head, they're the only wizard that can go from level 1 to level 3, and then, not up to level 4.
That's interesting. Yeah, maybe. Troll Hags are capped at 2, Ogdras is level 3, but is just like flat at 3, same as Elisse. Yeah, I can't think of any sort of like halfway casters. You do get halfway lords, and obviously Bretonnians have that sort of midpoint character. So it's interesting that they've got one as a caster.
Yeah, which sort of, I mean, the level 3, that bumping up of 30 points from level 2 to level 3, obviously starting at level 1, but the bumping up from level 2 to level 3 makes a big difference, I think, for the dispel range mostly.
Yeah.
It's not just you're getting an extra spell and you're getting an extra +1 to cast and dispel that. It's the extra 6 inches of dispel range. And in an Exiles list, like you say, where you take these guys, you can't take a level 4. So these are the only way to get that 24-inch dispel bubble.
But God, they're cheap.
They are very cheap. 45 points.
105 points for a level 3.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good. If they come on foot, I think you're very likely to always mount these guys.
Yeah, I have seen people run them in skirmishing bowmen. I think that's also a fine choice. It just depends how you want to protect them, which sort of allocation of core points you don't care about that you're gonna spend on keeping them alive.
Yeah, but I mean, for 12 points to double their move, they're still skirmish. I think I'd sort of always put these guys on a warhorse. Just gives them that maneuverability, the speed more than the sort of maneuverability to just keep themselves safe. Magic Res 1's nice, so maybe you do want to put them in a unit. But just the sheer amount of laws that they have access to, which Bretonnians are normally quite limited in their laws. I think it's Battle Magic, Elementalism, and Illusion, off the top of my head. Are the 3 that they can normally take. But obviously, these guys have got double that. They've got Demonology, Dark Magic, and Necromancy. Can't see myself using it with Necromancy, personally, just because I don't think...
all that leadership bomb that you're going to be doing with Bretonnians.
Yeah. But Demonology is not bad for the SIG. Dark Magic isn't a bad law all round. And then you've got the sort of staple of Battle Magic. And then the solid spells in Elementalism and Illusion. But I think if you're taking these guys, you're probably going to want to take them on one of the other laws that you can't otherwise take. I think for me, their biggest downside is probably they can't take Law of the Lady.
Sure.
They can't swap for those spells, which I mean makes sense. They're just a random dude who happens to be able to manipulate the winds of magic. But
got all the chuds in the comments going, "Where's my Law of the Lad?"
Yeah. Oh, that would be great. Just like 3 absolutely crazy spells that only these guys could use. That would be
Yeah,
hilarious.
just
Um,
that have no game effect, but it's just
yeah.
cast on a 7, you successfully down a keg. All you've made to impress. This is the high level analysis that you're
Yeah.
here for. I've been on a real demonology kick at the moment. Because I can stay focused on one thing at a time. On my other screen, I'm halfway through filling out a spreadsheet with casters that can take demonology / dark magic that also correlate to being able to take dragons. So I've got some ideas cooking up for that. But yeah, I think I probably want, if I'm just looking at this from sort of what's the strongest thing I can do with them, I'm going to start off with 3 battle magic casters and just go, how many fireballs and pillars of fire can I get for 315 points plus some items? There are some ways that you can make them a bit stronger. There's an item that gives them +1 to casting magic missiles. There is obviously Ruby Ring of Ruin. There's an item here that's, we talked about the single use of fireball cast at level 3. If you just want to go for magic missile spam, you could do that. Or something like demonology or dark magic, I think is very nice because you can turn a unit of quite mediocre troops into something that hits reasonably hard. You can give, Knights of the Realm that second attack at strength 6 at AP 3 base. Suddenly turns your core into a fairly heavy hitter.
Yeah, definitely. The one thing to watch out for if you are, because I think those, maybe they're not. I was going to say, I think those demonology buffs are all self, or they have to pass on
demonology is self, so you'd have to be in the unit. The Frenzy and Hatred spell is cast on a unit in range, an enchantment. But just stick it in a unit. 105 points. Magic resist 1.
Yeah, I mean, it's not bad. You do lose out on counter charge if you do that, though.
Oh, that's a very good point. So they're going in Knights Errant that don't have counter charge. So for anyone watching the video, that's not very impressive to you, but we recorded the first half of this video a week ago. So I'm feeling very proud of my memory right now. Fantastic. Yeah. Any other thoughts on them? I think we've pretty much wrapped them up. There are 3 casters. They're reasonably flexible.
I mean, they've got their untutored Arcanist.
Yeah.
Arcanist. One of the 3. It's not a great, it's obviously a negative special to have. There's no upside to it, but it's really not the worst thing in the world.
So I got told off for calling it a disadvantage. And the more I think about it, the more I think that this one YouTuber who commented specifically, a YouTube commenter, might be right. Normally you're all wrong. Leave more comments telling me things in the comment. But so the lower results are usually just do damage to yourself instead of end your entire casting phase. And especially if you're running this as like a skirmisher that's just sort of away from everyone else. Oh no, I've taken 1 wound. It's not ideal, but it's a 105 point model. I've taken a wound. That's fine.
No, that's very fair. That's very fair. It certainly is more likely to keep you being able to cast or keep casting spells. Which is very good. Or dispelling spells as well. Which is arguably worse, I think, when you miscast on a dispel and then you're suddenly not able to dispel for the rest of the phase or the rest of the turn.
That is absolutely brutal.
It's horrendous. So,
although in that case, you might end up just blowing yourself up and there goes your dispel anyway.
True.
No, I like it. I think, it's a net for me. I'm not super bothered about the rule. It just changes how it plays. Unlike the explosive table, the misfire table on the bombard, which we'll get to later on, that is a straight buff. It is wild.
Yes.
But so I think that's the cast, the characters there. It's a fairly comprehensive suite of characters. I can't think of many armies that can spend their 1,000-pointer characters and have as many heavy hitters. Like you can comfortably fit 2 heavy hitters and a level 4 caster in there. Not even have to squeeze points realistically.
Yeah, for sure. A list I'm running, hopefully to an event at the end of this month, has got a Baron, the Green Knight, and a Prophetess comfortably within that 1,000 points.
Was that me that went or you?
I don't know. I think it
was one of us, but we're back.
We're back now.
Perfect. So do you want to just take it again from a list I'm running at the start of this month? Or
I mean, a list that I'm running hopefully at the end of this month, an event, I've got a Baron, the Green Knight, and the level 4 Prophetess. And I've not really, like you say, had to skimp on anything. They're all pretty tooled up. So, yeah, comfortably getting 2 heavy hitters and a level 4 in.
Yeah, I really like the double character setup where you've got the 2 barons, or the baron and the duke, both tooled up. Which of the 2 have you picked? Since you're going with the Green Knight, you can obviously only take one of them. Have you gone for the Killing Blow, or have you gone for the Ogre Blade character?
No, I went Ogre Blade and Knightly Temper. Yeah,
I think that makes sense. If you're picking one, it's more sort of one size fits all.
yeah, and it gives me more consistent good AP because the Green Knight's only AP 1. That extra pip on the Ogre Blade does make a big difference a lot of the time, and you're not just fishing for 6s. And with the Green Knight being ethereal, if you've got a big monster that you are quite concerned about, as long as it's not a character with some magical attacks, just throw the Green Knight into it, and they'll just sit there all game. Yeah. Which, if that monster is 400 points, you're like, yeah, sure.
we're assuming that your opponent will put their 19-inch charge range dragon near the ethereal character, but sometimes that works out for you.
Yeah.
Although, to be fair, you can come out of a wood an inch away from it. So
exactly.
Very fair. If you get that
they
flank
just deploy
charge,
next to a wood and you go, haha, I'll charge you in the flank.
If you get the flank charge, you're sat at the same combat res for one for their close order, one for your flank charge.
Yeah.
You're never going to do a wound to them. In fact, deliberately use the worst attacks you can. So you don't do any damage. You just go, cool, we're sat in this combat until you charge me with something else. Good luck. Big fan of that. All right, perfect. Cool. So we've done the characters there. Let's move on to the core choices.
Also quite a few.
Yeah, I think I'm going to cut this. I'm giving myself work, but also I just don't have them set up here. Oh, God, Bretonnian core choices are going to be such a pain in the backside because
they're all over the place.
Yeah. Let's start with the mounted ones. I guess that makes the most sense. What am I even doing? Can I type? Nope, I put an O in there. It's like when someone stands behind you and watches you type, you just immediately can't. What? Right, fine. Turns out there's loads of Knights of the... Knights of the Realm. I forgot that they were on foot as well. That's a unit that just exists in the world. Perfect. And I'm sharing the wrong screen. There we go. Cool. So, on to core choices. Obviously, there's a mixed bag there. There's the... this is an interesting way to do it, because there's different core for different armies. It's fine. We'll do it. We'll do it this way anyway. So the Knights Errant, starting off with these, obviously did talk a little bit about how you don't like them, and I talked about how I like them in the case where you're hitting something with, weapon skill 4 or better, because at that point you're basically doing the same thing minus the counter charge. And then I said immediately, I don't actually like these because they don't have counter charge. Have we got any more thoughts on these?
I think the only other thing I'll add is I think they're too expensive for their downsides compared to a Knight of the Realm.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Because they're 5 points
I don't
less.
think 5 points is enough of the drop. For the loss of counter charge, gaining impetuous, and the loss of a leadership and a weapon skill.
Sure.
Yeah, I just don't think 5 points is enough. I'd have maybe had these at like 17 and possibly Knights of the Realm at 23, because I do think Knights of the Realm are ever so slightly too expensive. But I, play Bretonnia all the time, so I'm bound to say that.
if we're talking 17-point Knights, I am running so many Knights.
That's the thing. I think you'd see them. Then, and I just don't think you see them that often.
No. You don't understand. I'd run so many Knights. It would not be okay. Like, I've done a video talking about how I think Boar Boys are the best heavy cavalry in the game because they're 18 points a model. And then you put magic balance and stuff on them as well. Yeah. But like 17 points a model, brother, I am all about that. Obviously, I think Knights Errant are significantly worse than Boar Boys, but I'd be running them in core with multiple units. So I'm ready for that.
Yeah, but I think that's what they'd have to be for me, at least, to really want to run them. Because of their downsides compared to the Knight of the Realm.
I wonder if it's not necessarily that they're so bad, that it's that Knights of the Realm are actually quite good as a core slot because they've got that counter charge as well, and they're up to weapon skill 4. So we're kind of splitting hairs here, but it's maybe that, and I know you said you wanted Knights of the Realm more cheaper. I wonder if maybe putting Knights of the Realm up a point or two would make the Knights Errant look more appealing in that sort of comparison.
Yeah, I definitely think you've got that sort of tipping the scales sort of thing. Which way you want to tip it? Do you want to make Knights of the Realm less attractive, or do you want to make Knights Errant more attractive? And each one has the effect of doing the other, but sort of how are you going to do it?
For the external game balance.
I think if you go down the route of upping the Knights of the Realms points, if you like, it wouldn't take much for you to go, actually, I just can't really afford because I have to take some peasants. All right, peasants are very cheap. You'd often just see Bretonnian armies with 2 core units, which would just be a unit of knights and a unit of peasants. Now, I do that sometimes anyway, but that is with like quite a large unit of men at arms and a decent sized unit of Knight of the Realm. But I think if you start upping the points too much of the Knights of the Realm, you'd end up with no one really ever taking multiple units of knights in core, which I think would be a shame for Bretonnian armies.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to see just multiple units of 6. Really, that's the way that I envision Bretonnians. We just need to kill off those Pegasus Knights somehow. That's the solution. Then we'll see the Grail Knight army of my dream. But yeah, Knights Errant, I think they're solid. Whether or not you're super excited to take them, you're not looking at them and going, "This is bad." They're upgrades are 6 points for the command, which is not necessarily something that people talk about, but it does go between sort of 6 and 8 points for armies, so 6 is quite nice. 19 points a model, pretty cheap. You can take a 25-point magic banner. I don't think there's one in there that I'm super excited to take. Maybe the move through cover banner. Is that 20 points? It's in that sort of area.
It's that sort of cost. I can't think of anything else I really want to put on them.
No.
I mean, ideally, I'd want a war banner on them, but
you can only take one of those.
Yeah, well, yeah.
I think that's the downside. If you could put that's an interesting thought. If it was an extremely common magic item, I'd be putting war banners in a lot of lists, like multiple times. Whereas sometimes I just don't take banners. Maybe I wouldn't even take banners on these and just go, this is as cheap as I can get. And
I think that's the way you go. I'd maybe go 6 points for the champion just because it's an extra attack.
When I'm playing heavy cavalry, I tend to leave off the champion unless I'm going really deep into the unit, because you don't want to get challenged out a lot of the time. But I always take the musician just for that rally. I think something that people need to do more with cavalry is flee from charges, because you're probably not getting caught. You'll get that +1 to rallying on an 8 or whatever your general's leadership is, get a better fight next turn. There's a lot of play there.
I think generally for cavalry that should work quite well. Bretonnians,
Bretonnians, yep.
Yeah, you don't want to give up that ward save.
yeah. Although, to be fair, if there's any army unit that I'm going to do it on, it is the Errant. But that is a very good point. I did for a second just forget that, yes, your army does get significantly nerfed if you make any tactical choices. Sorry, I mean flee like a coward. Perfect. So we've talked about the Errants. Onto the Knights of the Realm. This is your bread and butter core unit. You're going to see them in most Bretonnian lists. And, the difference is +1 weapon skill, +1 leadership, plus countercharge, and no impetuous, and then +5 points as well. How do you feel about these ones?
I really like these guys. I'd love them to be cheaper, but that's just because I have lots of them and I want to run more of them. I really like them. I wish there was more access to upping their strength. So in 8th, when I played Bretonnians a lot as well, obviously you had lots of spells that would up characteristics, whether that be strength, weapon skill, give you rerolls. That isn't so prevalent in Old World, and I think units like Knights of the Realm suffer for it. That strength 5 on the charge just doesn't often feel enough. You can, like we were saying with the Outcast Wizards, though, there are some options for Bretonnians to do that with Demonology, and you've got Battle Lust, like you said, from Dark Magic. But in your sort of generic Grand Army Bretonnian list, you don't really have those options, which is a bit of a shame, I think, but that's more of a sort of slight criticism of Magic, really, and the wider Old World, rather than Knights of the Realm. But I really like them. I think their command is reasonably priced. The fact you can take 25 points of items on the champion as well, I'm a big fan of. My Knight of the Realm champion always has the I forgot what they're called, Helm of the Great Hunt. Maybe it gives them move through cover.
Nice.
Yeah, which is, I think, 20 points, might be 25.
And plus one
that
save
always
as well,
goes
I
on him.
think, isn't it?
No, because it's not armor, weirdly.
Oh,
It's
is it?
Antlers of the Great Hunt. That's it.
Right.
Not Helm of the
Yeah.
Great Hunt. Antlers, yeah. But yeah, just really nice, although I have lost him to dangerous terrains more times than I'd like to count, despite getting a reroll on it. Yeah, the counter charge is a big buff for these guys, though.
Yeah,
over
absolutely.
the Knights Errant.
Because, and we were talking about that earlier, but it's the game of footsie that you play with mounted units. Bretonnians are so good at. You're getting that movement 8 instead of movement 7, which is so typical for human cavalry. You're getting that reroll 1s on your charge rolls and your swift stride. You're probably, if your opponent lets you get into range, you're probably going to make it. So it's just another layer of, if they go, screw it, I'm just going to get really close to you. You know, there's no sort of way around it. The worst they can do is countercharge you. That's probably the answer.
Yeah, and I mean, that counter charge for me gives you a lot of the time just a safety net of, if I do foul this charge, I need like a 4 or a 5 plus my swift stride. It gives you that sort of safety net to fall back on.
Sure.
To, if you do fail it and stumble a bit forwards, make an easier charge for them, you can then go, but I've still got the counter charge.
Sure. Yeah. Gives you a little bit more reliability. Yeah, I like it. Interestingly, that you can only still have a 25-point magic banner. That feels a little odd. I'd like to see that go up to 50 points, I think.
Yeah, I think that would have been nice. Yeah, I don't know why they couldn't have done that. A lot of core units across different armies have got access to 50-point magic banners. But yeah, a minor inconvenience, I think.
Yeah, not the end of the world. So something that you're probably going to be looking at putting...
Sorry, Ed, I think I lost you again there.
Test. There we go. It's me. If you breathe near my microphone, it just goes, disconnected, and then both times my screen goes off, my voice goes off. So loads of editing. Love that for me. So that's fine. Mounted yeomen, you can take them in core, but not in every army. Let's just have a look here. So mounted yeomen are just in exiles.
I think it's only exiles. Yeah.
Let's just scroll down.
I'm just gonna try, because I know my Wi-Fi can be funny sometimes. I'm just gonna try a hotspot into my phone.
I don't think it's you, but I think that disconnection wasn't a disconnection.
Yeah.
That was just my
That's just your mic.
And the second it happens, I know I've done it, because a little yellow thing pops up in the corner, be like, oh, this Yeti microphone is disconnected. Yeah, I fucking know it has. Thanks. Perfect. Yeah, it is just the exiles, but that's okay. What's going to be really funny is when I forget to edit this out. There was a section, someone tagged me in a comment, it was like, 109, did you mean to edit this section out?
Yeah.
And there's just me stumbling over some words and I'll just fix that in post. Didn't. Perfect. Okay, so we'll go back into it, and I'll just make sure I've got the human on screen. There we go. I do have them on screen. Perfect. So then we've also got a third mounted unit. I think this is the last mounted unit, and it's only for the exiles that can take this as a core unit. But this is the light cavalry. Interestingly, on a 25 by 50 mil, which makes sense for light cav, but it always feels a little bit weird to me to have them both in the same army where you've got the two different base sizes. It doesn't make a difference. It's just something I look at and go, huh, that looks odd. So we've got light cavalry, still got the 8-inch move, as you'd expect from a light cav. Fairly standard. Leadership 6, you can't even take a sergeant upgrade to give you leadership 7, which seems to be pretty standard across the army. You've just got the flat leadership, which is interesting. And they're 13 points a model, but you can take light armor for 2 points a model and shields for a point a model. So if you want to go up to 16 points, you can have a 5-up save, which is a really, I love that.
It's a choice. It's certainly a choice.
Yes. So, what are your initial thoughts on this unit?
I think the upgrades are too expensive. Like the armor, particularly, is definitely too expensive. Maybe at a point a model, maybe I'd consider it. But for 3 points for a 5-up save, I just wouldn't bother.
Yeah.
They come with short bows, which is nice, and cavalry spears, so they're not horrendous on the charge if you do have to charge them into something. But the short bows is okay. Ballistic skill 3, so they're not hitting all the time, but they're not horrendous. Feigned flight is okay, but I think you've got to really consider where they're going to be once they've fled.
Yeah.
Because they are levies and peasantry, so they can't use the general's inspiring presence.
I think it might be you, bud.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know what happened there. Let me hotspot my phone.
No worries. Are you on the hotspot now?
Wi-Fi normally. I am about to connect to it when it pops up.
When it pulls its finger out.
Yeah.
Something that I was going to just double check, which is now is a good time to do it. Peasantry. Who can join peasants? Units. A character with a special rule can only join. Okay, so it's the vows
so
that stop
all
you.
the vows stop you. Yeah.
But the outlaw,
but weirdly,
the outcast wizard can join it.
Yeah, and weirdly, anything with the exiles vow or the crusaders vow can also join them because they don't have that stipulation.
Some great copywriting there.
Yeah.
Although like the exiles vow, I kind of see. That's
yeah.
Not,
yeah.
I'm not entirely sure where we got up to on the human, to be honest.
It will probably just disconnect me quickly.
Cool.
Right, I'm now on the hotspot.
Hell yeah. Cool. Should we just take Yeoman from the top? Because I don't think we got very far in, to be honest. Oh, have you gone again?
Yep. Are you there?
Yeah. Can you see me?
Yes, I can see you now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Went back for a second, but I can see you now.
Lovely stuff. All right. I can see
I'm on the hotspot, so we should be all good.
Perfect. Let's just take Yeoman from the top because I don't think we got very far in.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So, lastly, for mounted units, we've got the mounted yeoman in core, and it's only the exiles that can take these as core, but that still counts. Yep. So you've got a unit of fast cav, light cav. Sorry, they are movement 8 as you'd expect. Fairly typical. 1 wound, T3, 6 up leadership, 13 points. But if you want to spend a whole 3 points, you can get them up to a 5 up save. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, maybe if it was a point for the light armor, but 3 points is too much for a 5 up save.
Yeah. What I think's interesting is normally on fast cav they come with either light armor or shields, but they only come with one of the weapons. So
yes,
this way round you can pay more points to get defenses, but you have the same amount of offensive output, which is an interest. I don't know that I love that, honestly. I think I'd rather have one weapon and 1 bit of armor, and then have the points to upgrade either way if I had the desire to do so.
Yeah, because often when you get fast cav like that with sort of 1 bit of armor, 1 bit of 1 weapon, you also get the option to swap the weapon to the other one for free most of the time. So if you're desperate for them to have bows or the spear, you can sort of do that. It doesn't cost you any more, and you still get a bit of a save. But yeah, like you say, these guys have got absolutely no save whatsoever, as they come at 13 points, which feels quite a lot. But you've got the sort of versatility, I suppose, of the cavalry spears and the short bows, as versatile as you can be at weapon skill, ballistic skill 3. If they're charging things, in a Bretonnian army, something's probably gone wrong. But their feigned flight's not bad. Again, 2 points model. Feel like that could have been 1 point. Particularly because they can't use the general's leadership to then rally after they've feigned flighted. So you've got to sort of be aware of where your other units, your characters are. Sort of help them out with a rally, because leadership 6, even with a musician, it's only 50-50 that they'll actually pass it.
Little better on leadership 7, but not much.
Yeah. They come with fire and flee, which is okay. It's better than just fleeing, I suppose. You get probably 5 strength 3 shots, not the end of the world. I certainly wouldn't have paid for it if it was an option, though.
No, I think that's fair.
But reserve move is nice, because it does mean you actually pretty much all the time get use out of those 5 bow shots. Because rather than just marching, you just move, then hit them with short bows, and then just reserve move again.
So I think that's the use for this unit in my eyes. They are a unit that has so many special rules on a unit that you wouldn't necessarily expect them to have. Fire and flee. They get open order and skirmishes. Usually going to want to go skirmishes, but open order is really nice if you're reserve moving. Reserve move, and then obviously swift stride as well. But you can have this as a bunker for your caster if you want. At which point you might then go, well, I guess I'm paying for the 5-up save and maybe even the feigned flight, depending on how I feel about it.
Yeah, I can't remember if feigned flight is one of the rules where every model has to have it, or if it's a majority thing.
That's a great point. Through the power of the internet, I could check and put it in, but I'm not going to. Let us know in the comments, because that's just one step too far. This is going to be like a 2.5-hour video. I don't have time to be doing all the little cuts.
But yeah, it's definitely an option for, like you say, a little wizard bunker, and for the Outcast wizards in the exiles list as well. It's not a bad bunker for them, particularly because they're core in that list.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we've exhausted everything we can say about that incredibly beige unit.
Yes.
If you have a specific use for them, take them. If you wanted to, you could use them in an Errantry crusade list as like a mobile screening unit to stop you from having to charge from Impetuous or Frenzy if you've got Frenzy banner.
From memory, I think they're rare in a Errantry crusade list. They're special in the Grand Army, and I think they go into rare.
All right, then.
Maybe you don't take those.
Yeah, I immediately walk that back, because take cheaper units and charge more.
Yeah.
All right, on to another one. Here's another slightly controversial unit in that it's Knights of the Realm on foot. Before we talk about rules, do you like this unit at all?
No.
No?
No.
Great models.
They're nice models. I've got a box of 20 of them somewhere in this room, but they are very much still in their box in the cellophane. They've got some really good rules. By some really good rules, I mean Furious Charge.
Yeah.
But your movement 4, you're basically never going to get to use Furious Charge, because why are you the one doing the charging? This is the Anvil unit. If you're taking this in a Bretonnian army, unless it's an exiles list and you've gone really heavy on the infantry, which I think is a very fair choice for the exiles list. But if you're taking these in like a Grand Army list, these are going to be your Anvil, so you're never going to get use out of that Furious Charge, apart from maybe if the the enemy falls back in good order and you happen to pursue them more than 3 inches.
On that combat that you've definitely won with the Knights of the Realm on foot.
I don't really see a role for them outside of the exiles list. I think they do have a place in that list, because I think you can definitely go really heavy on the infantry in that list. And these are your sort of shock infantry, so they work reasonably well in that sort of way. But in a Grand Army list, I just don't really see the place for these. When you have to take peasants, why not just take your foot unit as peasants?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if they came with full plate, and I know Bretonnians don't do full plate at all, but if they were a 3-up save, I'd be interested in running them. Bunker a battle magic wizard in there as well. And just like, I'm going to go for that 5-up, 5-up, or elementalism, whatever you want to go for. I think that's an interesting way to play them, but it's not a rule they have. You could take a big brick of them in a points denial style list, but again, I think men at arms do a better job of it because they can be super sub and super shield wall. Yes, they die in droves, but these things are going to die in droves as well.
You've only got 1 point better save if you go with a hand weapon. If you go with a great weapon, you've got the same save as the men at arms. And
that's
you
depressing.
Don't kill anything, just like the men at arms don't kill anything. So why would you not take the men at arms for less than half the points?
Yeah. Nope, that's very fair. All right, in that case, let's talk about men at arms.
Yeah.
I really like these.
Yeah, I quite like these as well. I have seen people go really sort of quite big units, like 35, 40.
Yeah.
I can definitely see a place for those sort of units.
Yeah.
I generally run them a lot smaller myself. I run them between 15 and 20. Just because I don't want to use them as like a points denial block. I just want to use them as a sort of an anchor for a couple of turns, just to hold a flank or try and pin a fast unit down like a chariot or something that I'm really sort of concerned about getting into, say, the flank of the lances or something like that. I think the second champion in the Grail Monk is very useful, and that's before you get to the triptych for stubborn. Just giving you 2 abilities to challenge something out is massive.
Absolutely, yeah.
Pole arms, very good, very solid weapon. Having that versatility between sort of a spear and a halberd, very nice, and very cheap, 4 points.
Yeah, and comes with the polearm for free, which there is another unit that's very similar that you do have to pay for the polearm, which is the big downside of. But I think these things are incredible. As you say, comes with the shield wall. You can pay for the triptych to get the stubborn. You can put a sergeant in there to give them just automatic. If you fall back in good order, you automatically give ground instead. This unit just becomes an annoyingly tanky stodge, because I don't think we see units that can do high number of wounds typically in Old World. It's usually people are bringing high toughness, high save things that they need to deal with, or just like high save, knights with T4 or T3 and a 2-up save, something along those lines. So if you're just going, okay, your cannon killed 4 whole men-at-arms, congratulations. It would have probably killed 4 Knights of the Realm because I'm in lance formation. Too bad, so sad. I really like them. I think it's a solid unit there.
I think levies and not levies, warband and horde are a great combination for them to have. And with the sergeant at arms, you can
leadership
almost comfortably get to a leadership 10 blob that is just really hard to shift.
Yeah, absolutely. And the pole arms, let's just scroll down to those. As you said, it's basically either a spear or a halberd. I think you're almost always going spear. I mean, maybe if you get the charge off with your men-at-arms.
Yeah.
Because that's...
Yeah, I really think it depends. Like, I think I've used the pole arm successfully, like, once, and that was when I happened to flank charge unit of greatswords. And I was like, now's the sort of time to use it, because the spear gives me, nothing. I need to kill, like, 3 greatswords to not be attacked back. I'm just going to go for the strength 4 AP -1. But, if you go with the spear, the single-handed variant, then you get the bonus for the shield as well, so you get 5-up armor in combat, which is nice, which you don't get with the double-handed.
You heard it here first. If you ever need to flank charge the meta threat of Empire Greatswords, a halberd will do well for you. But the rest of the time, just use them as a spear.
Yes.
The only downside is you don't get the plus initiative, which is almost never going to come up, because they're initiative 3, right? So I guess if your opponent's running great weapons, you'd be like, oh, gee whiz, I wish I was hitting them with strength 3 attacks with no AP at the same initiative. Maybe I had to kill 2 models. But for a free weapon, you can't ask for much more. I think it's really nice.
Yeah.
Interesting cost on the upgrades as well. It doesn't really make a difference, but you got 5 points for the standard and musician, and then 7 points for both the champions, which is, I'm assuming, a little bit of a nod to how powerful having a second champion to challenge out that Dragon Lord is. That's probably
perhaps.
something along those lines.
Yeah, I think it's got to be one of the only units where the champion or champions in this case and the standard and musician are different points. I can't think of many where that's the case.
I can't think of any others off the top of my head.
No.
All right. That's a detail that's interesting, that makes not much difference, but there you go. If there's ever a pub quiz for Warhammer the Old World, you will be prepared. Notes down, write a pub quiz for Warhammer the Old World. I think that'd be great. Perfect. So there are other units in the infantry that you might want to take, and that is peasant bowmen. And something we didn't mention for the yeoman at arms is this is your 0 to your 1+ peasantry, but you can also take the bowmen instead, which is probably where I'd lean if you're playing sort of a standard knights list. How do you feel about the bowmen?
They are okay. That's probably the best you're ever going to get out of them.
They're there.
I have sort of recently started taking one unit of them.
Yeah.
Normally a unit of 12 skirmishers, just because I have 12 painted, and that filled up my core allowance quite nicely. I probably wouldn't bother with any of the upgrades, sort of champion-wise. I definitely wouldn't bother giving them light armor. I think that's a waste of a pointer model, even if it is only 10 or 12 points. That's
adds up.
Half a knight. Yeah.
That's one whole foot knight.
Yeah, it is. It is. I think skirmishers I definitely go for over close order.
Yeah.
And then that obviously takes you out of being able to take the stakes or the braziers, which is a bit of a shame. The braziers would be quite nice. If I was running them close order, I'd probably stretch for the braziers, I reckon.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's very meta dependent right now. I feel like flaming attacks are probably more of a downside. You get that one troll horde player who'd be super sad. He's like, "Hey, I'm gonna wound you, like hit you on 5s, wound you on 6s, on 5s as well." But like, you don't really get much of a save. That sucks for you. But then you come up against, I don't know, Chaos Dwarves or whatever else. Like, oh, sweet, ward save.
Yeah, there are definitely downsides to it. But I do think with trolls, with Tomb Kings,
sure,
which are Tomb Kings are reasonably popular. Having some flaming attacks, is
Tomb Kings are going to be stacking at least 1 -1 to hit, so you're going to be hitting on 6s.
That's the biggest issue. These guys just barely ever hit anything. I mean, I did once kill a tree man with a unit of 12 of these.
From full?
I say kill. No, they took his last wound. He'd been trebucheted, and they took his last wound. But that's the most they've ever done. I think is I can say they've killed a tree man.
Yeah, I really like one unit of these because you have to take them. So on the basis of I have to take a unit of peasants, I like them, as you say, somewhere between like 10 and 14, and they just sit somewhere annoying like a wood or a hill. Wood's great because then you're -2 to be shot, which is actually fairly reasonable defense until someone ruby rings you and you're like, too bad, so sad. Shouldn't have stood in a flammable wood. That's my fault. But they're pretty solid at shutting down enemy fast cavalry, because fast cavalry tends to be in that sort of like 20 points range if they're half decent. Look at you Glade Riders, for example. And if they come into your bow range, they're actually going to be pretty sad, because you're like, oh, I hit you with 4 shots, I wound you with 2 of them, you've got no save. Oh, I've just done, your unit is now pretty much useless, you've got 3 models left. That's sort of the one use I see for them, but they don't hurt anything real, I would say.
Not really, no. It's very much just chip damage.
Yeah. For completeness, let's talk about the 2 upgrades. Obviously, you've mentioned the braziers. 20 points for flaming attacks, I think, is super steep. I'd want to be running like a real brick of them, something like 30 on a hill, so the front 2 ranks can attack and then you volley fire, but I'm not excited about that. Defensive stakes, I think, are interesting. 10 points for it gives your opponent disordered charges, basically. And they do kill fanatics, as we mentioned last time. So if you're playing it, if you don't go to events, if you have one opponent and it is just your mate Tim who refuses to play anything less than 12 fanatics, defensive stakes, best 100 points you can take as you take 10 units of bowmen. Just sit behind them. Yeah, they're aggressively fine, but you shouldn't feel bad for taking them, especially as you say, skirmish is a good way to win them. Perfect. I think that's pretty much it for the core infantry outside of the one that comes in the Arcane Journal, the Yeoman Guard. So let's have a look at those. So Yeoman Guard, immediately 1 point more than a man-at-arms. Talk me down from why that is not just something that kills them.
They do gain a weapon skill over the men-at-arms, which is very nice.
2 to 3 is massive.
Yeah. That's 3 to 4 isn't as big a jump, but 2 to 3 is a very, very big jump in terms of sort of output and survivability. To be honest, they are upper base leadership, but that matters a lot less because their sergeants are the same leadership.
Sure.
The men-at-arms do actually, their sergeants and their grandma do get the higher leadership. But like you mentioned when we were chatting about men-at-arms, they do have to pay for their pole arms if they want to go down that route, which it's only a point, but you're suddenly then 2 points more than a men-at-arms, or than a man-at-arms. You have basically all the same rules. You're not levies, but you've got horde, you've got peasantry, you've got warbands, you've got shield wall. You do come with veteran though.
It's pretty nice.
Which is very nice. You've got the 2 sergeant options. Your command it probably works out roughly the same cost, but your standard and musician are 1 point more. Your regular champions are 1 point less, weirdly. And the crown monk.
Copy editing.
Yeah. They do also have access to a magic standard, which I didn't realise actually for quite a while. 25 points, so not massive, but
this is where I might put a war banner, honestly, because you're looking at a big brick of static combat res, and that puts you up to 3 ranks, close order banner, war banner. That takes you to 6. It's not quite enough to beat a dragon with their max overkill, but maybe there's something else you can stick in there to boost them up.
Could chuck a BSB in there.
That feels worthwhile.
I mean, you could. I didn't say you should, but you could.
No, you're correct. That is a thing that you can do. That is one of the options available to you.
And got the same options in terms of the triptych or the sergeant at arms for that sort of fall back in good order, stubborny, that sort of give ground mechanic, and sort of manipulating that, which is really nice. I do like these. Would I pay for the pole arm?
No. So I
probably not. I'd probably just go thrusting spear.
Yeah, 100%. I actually like these. Cheaper. I like these way more because the thrusting spear, as we briefly alluded to for the yeoman, the thrusting spear is better because it gives you the +1 initiative when you charge. It's not a lot better, but realistically, you're saying that halberds have worked out for you once. So just taking the slightly upgraded version of the polearm that you're going to use anyway, I think is fine. And for 1 point, you're getting, as you said, weapon skill, leadership. There was something else in there, veteran. That's 3 rules. I'd pay a point for veteran. I'd pay a point for the combined weapon skill and leadership. I feel pretty good about them as an upgrade there, because if you're running 40 of them, that's an extra 40 points. That's not a huge jump, really. Perfect. As you say, the rest of the rules are just exactly the same on there. Still got the triptych and the Grail Monk on there as well, and the slightly weird cost for the command. But at least this one makes more sense than the men-at-arms. So that wraps up our core, and I think a little bit of a mixed bag. Weirdly, so the characters were way up here. Bretonnian characters, whack them in at S tier. Bretonnian core, I feel like you're solidly B. There's not anything in there that gets me excited.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Very mid-table performance from their core.
Yeah, so that is a little bit of an issue when you're looking at a couple of the Arcane Journal armies that put you at 66, not 66, but 33% has to be core. That's not ideal. That's Errantry, I believe, that puts you up to that, which is, not something that I'm super in love with. But just weigh the numbers; it'll be fine. Huge thanks, as always, to my Grail Knight tier supporters. That is Morpheus Gaming, Mechanite, and most recently Creekhammer. Thank you as well to everyone else who's popping up on the screen right now. If you like what I do, you too can become a supporter of the channel, becoming a member down below. Or, if not, you can like the videos, share, watch. All of these things really have helped me grow the channel and will continue to help me expand over the next few months. There's a growing close order Discord linked down below. That's not a members only Discord. There are members only VIP areas, but it is something that you're more than welcome to join. We are starting to grow a great community there. It's quite active. Lots of great hobby going on down below as well. If you haven't subscribed, there'll be a link to subscribe on your screen over here, and there'll be another video to watch if you want to over there. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.